Hello everyone! After playing Mortal Kombat 11 Aftermath, I decided to revisit the Robocop films. As you all know, I'm a huge fan of Paul Verhoeven's Robocop. It was the first review I went over on Action Reaction, and I thought since I ranked the Terminator films last year, that I would share with you today my favorite Robocop films, ranging from my least favorite to most favorite. Dead or alive, you're coming with me. Starting the list at number 4, for my least favorite is Robocop from 2014. Now, I do appreciate what this film tried to do. To me, the execution of this is what really felt this movie. They missed what made the original film so special. It's not just the satire, it's the heart and emotion. I felt like this was a soulless remake. There's so much they could have done. And on top of that, they made it a light R, heavy PG-13, so it didn't have the brutality of the original film or even the second film. More than that, though, what really hurts the film for me are the horrible performances. I do not like Joel Kinnaman as Robocop. I know he doesn't sound as robotic as Robocop 3, but at least I could believe that could be from Peter Weller. He felt like Robocop. On top of that, Abby Cornish, I didn't like her performance. Michael Keaton's good as a villain, and Gary Oldman is the main highlight of this film as a scientist. I do appreciate what they try to do, you know. They modernize it with the Middle East and warfare with robotics. You get Samuel L. Jackson there. And, you know, you have a little bit of the satire from the Paul Verhoeven films, but it's done more in a grounded way. And we also have the corporation controlled this being, you know, it's a human who's being stripped away of his humanity slowly, becoming more robotic. And it's interesting. However, I do not like the rubber suit. I know it's supposed to be metal, but I hate that, and I hate the trailer and that dialogue where it's just like, oh, he looks like a bad 80s toy. Oh, get out of here. At least this Robocop looks more badass, and that guy in a rubber suit looks like Dark Knight. Despite that, I don't like the villains in this film. They're very cookie cutter. They're not as iconic as Clarence Bonniger and his crew, or Dick Jones at OCP. And on top of that, I don't like his death scene. It's a car explosion that just looks silly. You know, it's not brutal. You don't feel like you witnessed a tragedy. And despite the things this film did, I just feel like its execution is a bit off. Even to when he's just like, dead or alive, you're coming with me. It feels shoehorned in when it should feel epic. It should feel rewarding to the audience. It's very different seeing a man who's somewhat alive. It's funny because after the explosion, all he has is a hand. And you think it would have ruptured his lungs, but no, his lungs are okay. That's like one of the few things left beside his head and brain. You know, it's not about like, oh, look at me, I'm like a man who's alive in a machine. And I know for a remake they try to change it. No, it's about a man who's dead, who happens to remember his humanity, despite being a ghost in a machine. And that's what truly made it special. Plus, they gender swapped Lewis. Kenneth Williams is a great actor. I loved him in Boardwalk Empire, but I could go on. I know I'm going to make a lot of people mad. A lot of people are like, well, he's fast and mobile, which is cool. I like how fast Robocop is. He was slow in the originals. But they're talking about the modernizations, the technology, and they're missing the heart and soul, what made that original film so special. Above that at number 3 is Robocop 3. Now, Robocop 3 is a film that I actually at times enjoy more than Robocop 2. But this is where they started to take it down a notch for the kiddos. You know, Robocop the animated series just came out. He was selling a lot of toys, and they had to basically make a PG-13 Robocop. As you know, Frank Miller helped write the second and third Robocop films, but his scripts were completely changed. As a matter of fact, there's actually a comic book graphic novel that is adapted from his original screenplays. Some stuff is actually quite the same, but the execution of it was a bit better. I love it with the relocation program. Daggett as a villain with OCP, them getting bought out by the Japanese. In many ways, Daggett's group seems like the type of freaking Gestapo force that's in Portland, Oregon right now, and across the United States. This movie feels very relevant. And Fred Decker directs this film, much like the director of Robocop 2014. I think he does a great job with what he has. It's just too much interference making it PG-13. But overall, you know, he did the Monster Squad and stuff like that, and he wanted it to go back to the way the first film was. Studio interference came in and budget restraints, and he had to do the best with what he had, and I actually think he actually crafted a really good film. Peter Weller was not available to film since he was doing Naked Lunch, So they had to get a new actor. Overall, we get the death of Anne Lewis. That is tragic, but I kind of like it because it adds a revenge element. The only thing is that Robocop, besides sounding robotic, he gets his butt kicked. That's one thing I hate about the second and third films. You look at Robocop in the first film, he's like this badass super cop, Robocop, and then he's just getting kicked by ninjas and stuff. Ninja Robocop is in this, or should I say a ninja robot. He's a cool villain. This film does feel very much like a comic book, but I love the final battle. I love that scene where Dak is just like, "How can I help you, officer?" And he's just like, "By resisting arrest." Probably the best line, and I love the jetpack scene. That was one of my favorite scenes as a kid, but it has not aged well. And because of that, with the watered down nature, Robocop getting his butt kicked, and the effects and just story not aging very well, it's lower than Robocop 2 and 1 on my list. But I still think it's a good movie. It's a guilty pleasure. It's not the best made movie. It's not an Oscar movie. But I'd rather watch it over the 2014 remake. After that is Robocop 2. This is a film that is a dark, nihilistic film. But I have to say, it still has some of the satire with the commercial, sunblock. Even Robocop 3 has certain commercials, like the first one. Even I buy that for $1. I missed the score, though. The score is one thing I missed. That's one thing Robocop 3 brought, was a score from the first film. But what this film has is another terrific performance from Peter Weller and the villain Kane, who you may recognize as the bad guy in Last Action Hero. I love this drug of Nuke. It has a new antagonist for him to go against. It is messed up, though, that a little kid is part of the gang and gets killed in a violent way. But also, this film is a satire and sequels with the whole Robocop 2 program. So there is a brilliant satire there. It is a much, much darker film with like police corruption, drug use. And Robocop does get reprogrammed. There's some funny humor there.
Thank you for not smoking.
I still don't like him getting his butt kicked in certain moments, but it all makes up for it with the very ending when Robocop 2 is basically made from the body of Kane. I love that confrontation with the motorcycle. After he apprehends Kane and basically almost kills him, they get his body and use him as a new Robocop, but he turns rogue and starts killing people. And I love the final showdown. Irvin Kershner, director of Empire Strikes Back, did this. This was his last film. And yeah, the music is a bit corny at times. They did switch the tint of his suit, but it's Peter Weller Robocop that still has that hard R violence like the original. And because of that, I respect it more than the sequels, despite it being a dip down from the original. But what can I say? My number one, nothing beats Robocop from 1987, directed by Paul Verhoeven. One man died for our sins. His name was Alex J. Murphy. He was resurrected as Robocop. I love this film. Probably the best R-rated revenge film I've seen. One of the best R-rated films I've ever seen. I think the only thing that really measures up to this, besides John Wick 1, is probably like Dredd and Deadpool 1. I love both of those films. Robocop is a great film and a sad, tragic film. One of the best revenge tales. Alex J. Murphy, we get to know him. We get to see this partner, Lewis. We get to see Clarence Bonniger and his men just brutally murder Alex J. Murphy in the worst possible way. We get to see him come back as Robocop, learning that he used to be Alex J. Murphy, regaining his humanity throughout the course of the movie. That's one thing the sequels forgot, is that he did regain some of his humanity. Oh man, Clarence Bonniger. Yeah, before that 70s show, man, he was great. Dick Jones. I had to kill Bob Moore because he made a mistake. Now it's time to erase that mistake. I love the satire. I buy that for $1. Yeah, speaking of Clarence Bonniger's, man, you know how I feel now in Corona during this pandemic? When I see people without a mask or like coughing or sick, I feel like the guy in Clarence Bonniger's crew where it's just like, here's some toxic waste, and they're like, help me. And I'm like, get away from me. That's how I am around people now, seriously.
Help me! Don't touch me, man!
I love the scene where he goes to his house, and it's that tragic scene where he has flashbacks and the music, dun, 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 and he's just like moving, just like getting mad. You also have Miguel Ferrer in this film as Bob Morton. That scene where he has the little jack thing and stabs it in Clarence Bonniger's throat is just amazing. Clarence Bonniger, just Everybody in this film gives a great performance. It's a memorable film, a cult classic. I just love it, from the music, the action, and the performances. This was a very deep film, not only with action, but with the story. This had heart and soul, and this is what the sequels and the remake lack, is heart and soul of what made this film special. It balanced out the dark, edgy violence with the comedic satire perfectly. And Paul Verhoeven, of course, later on did Total Recall, Basic Instinct, Starship Troopers, and the infamous Showgirls, which I would probably recommend over some of the Robocop sequels and remake, to be honest. Anyway, okay, I digress. Robocop is a classic, and yeah, I'd buy that for $1. Totally. Let me know your favorite Robocop films down in the comments below. What is your least favorite to most favorite film from the Robocop series? You can even include some from Prime Directives. I didn't include them, but you can go ahead and include them if you want. And you can also subscribe for more videos. Follow me on the Stardust app at Fred Film Fanatic and on Instagram at Fred Film Fanatic. Go ahead and check out my action reaction, early review of the Robocop films, my Terminator ranking, for more content. Stay safe and stay healthy, everyone out there. Dead or alive, you're coming with me.